find fewer to probably some kind of erotic or yes, stuff like this. So what I am going to speak about is actually poetry. Yes, because in case of poetry, we are much better informed. We are much better informed about a kind of structure of the poetry, about rhythm and about speed. Here I must say what I understand under rhythm. I use here definition which was given by Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, rather old definition of rhythm, but one that suits me quite well. And he says, if we take in the first place the purely temporal aspect of musical sound, we have to discuss a necessity of times being in general the dominant thing in music. That's the first point. The bar as a purely mathematically regulated measure of time, and C, rhythm, which begins to animate this abstract rule by emphasizing some specific beats and subordinating others. Yeah, so we have three things. We have the time as a kind of medium in which the music exists, in which the music is performed, then a kind of mathematical structure, and then some change, some alternation of stress and unstressed. And in this case, we are, or in concern of these 3 points, we are much better informed about Scandinavian poetry. We, for example, know very well that it had some fixed speed in which it was told, in which it was performed, in which it was recited. Yes. Why do we know it? Because it was used for measuring the time. Here there are some examples from Vattensdøla saga and Grottasonger. And these are the places where you recite poetry and you count the stanzas, how many stanzas you say, and you measure time by counting this. And we know a lot about Old Norse meters. Old Norsemen used many meters, which we can generally divide in 2 big groups: the skaldic meters like Drottqued, Kviduhater, Runhand, and so on, and Eddic meters like Fornirdislag, Malahater, and Ljodehater. These meters were syllabotonic or tonic, respectively. That means counting only stressed syllables or counting stressed and unstressed syllables. But what is the case in both of these types of meters is that the structure of stressed and unstressed syllables is actually free. Yes, you can see it on the stanza from a poem, mythical poem, which is called Veluspa. That means something like the prophecy of the series, a poem describing the beginning of the world and the end of the world, and the first living being, which was the huge giant called Ymir. And it says, of old was the age when Ymir lived, sea nor cool waves, nor sand there were, earth has not been, nor heaven above, but a yawning gap, and grass nowhere. And now, if you analyze metrically the Old Norse original, which you have down there under English translation, you see that the metrical structure is changing all the time. Yes, you find just one case when the metrical structure is repeated. Yes, the end of the last line and the end of one before last line. But in all other cases, the structure of stressed and unstressed change. And of course, there is a question if we can speak about rhythm in this case. But I think we can. Yes, there is. I have found a passage, a short passage in Roger Scruton, The Aesthetics of Music, where he says that regularity is not necessary for rhythm. Yes, especially the end of the quotation I find interesting, where he says that rhythm plays with regularity, but is not reducible to it. But even by plain hearing, yes, if you say for yourself this last line, Gap was ginunga and gras hvergi, you see it has some kind of rhythm, even when the structure of stressed and unstressed syllables changes. And now, in following, I'm going to speak about one special case of metrical structure, and I will start speaking about one poem, one Old Norse poem, whose name is, Old Norse name is Darraðarljo. The names, the English translations of the name of the poem differ. You can find it as the Valkyries song, the Song of the Spears, the battle poem of the Valkyries, the Fatal Sister, and Song of Darraðarljo. There are many opinions about this poem. Actually, we do not know precisely what the title, what the name of the poem means. Yes, Njál Saga, where the poem is preserved, says that describe a moment when some man in Katanes, which is Caithness in today's Scotland, saw some 12 riders coming to a house, and there they were all lost to his sight. He went to the house and looked in through a window slit that was in it, and saw that there were women inside. They sang this song, or rather they recited the poem, yes, and he learned it by heart, which means that actually this name Darraðarljo, the reason is that it's some song or poem heard by this Darudr. But since the Njál Saga is not much believed, and you will see why, there are alternative explanation of the title. There was Old Norse known Darraðr, which means actually despair, and so it would mean the Song of the Spears or the poem about spears. And there is name, Darraðr, meaning actually a spearman, a man with spear, and it's by name of Odin, the highest god of Old Norsemen and the god of war and poetry, which is the most probable explanation of the title. We don't know what the poem exactly describes. According to mentioned Njál Saga, the poem describes the Battle of Clontarf between an Irish army led by Brian Boru, Irish king, and some Norsemen in Ireland. And this battle took place in the year 1014. But this is not very probable, since won by the Irish and the Vikings were defeated, which is not what is described in the poem. The poem speaks about who won the battle in stanza 7 and 8. In stanza 7, there is a half stanza dedicated to Norsemen, and it says the land will be ruled by new peoples who once inhabited outlying headlands. It means the Viking will rule the island. And there is a half stanza about Irish, and it says the men of Ireland will suffer a grief that will never grow old in the minds of man. So it doesn't look much like victory, and so it's thought that it probably describes some other battle. Some scholars think about the Battle of Confey in the year 970. Now, there is one thing we are pretty sure of who speaks in the poem, and these are Valkyries, so Old Norse female deities of war, who decide who will die in the battle and who will live, and the deities who select among those who die in a battle, and they bring the fallen warriors to the Hall of the Slain, to Valhalla, which is ruled over by the highest god, Odin. So these female war deities speak in the poem. Now, there is a kind of overused cliche saying that old Norse poetry of the Viking Age is extremely gloomy and extremely bloody. That's definitely not the case, but exactly in case of this poem, it's so. So I'm a bit sorry. It will be a kind of scary, but yes, you must, yes, listen to it. So the poem says, it is horrible now to look around as the dim red clouds darken the sky. The heavens are stained with blood of man as the Valkyries sing their song. Blood rains from the cloudy web on the broad loom of slaughter. The web of armies, grey as armor, is now being woven. The Valkyries will cross it with a crimson weft. Yeah, so we see there is blood mentioned, strife in these stanzas, and many other things like battles and slaughter and so on and so on. But what I would like to...
We need to remind you about the time, so I remind you now.
Yes. Good. So now I have spent 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you a lot. Yes. So what I would like to point to is another thing that the second mentioned stanzas and the following stanzas actually contain an interesting metaphor, or we don't know if it's metaphor actually. I will speak more about it. Concerning weaving and the typical way of weaving at the time, the weaving on the warp weight loom that you can see on the right hand side of the slide. Yes. I translated in this case this stanza we have already read. I tried to translate it a bit more properly, so that you can see all the things that that speak about this weaving. Yes? From the white loom's cloud of the beam is, or close beam is the thing which is up there, and the cloud of the beam is of course the fabric which is being done. Yes, and there is raining blood, of course, that predicts the fall of man, that's clear. There is the armor gray warp. Warp is actually, yes, these are threads that go vertically from the beam down there to the weight. This warp is, it says that it rises, which is like terminus technicus for setting this warp weight loom in the working position, in the vertical position. Now the Valkyries, these deities of war, are filling it, yes, with weft. That's what's done. Weft means this horizontal thread, single horizontal thread that's being filled in the warp. Yes, and now let's go to the next stanza, which is kind of, yes, might be depressive, but however, I have to read it. This warp is made of human entrails. Human heads are used as loom weights, these things very down that keeps the threads of the warp straight. The heddle rods are blood-wet spears. The heddle rod is, you can see it on the picture. And the shafts, you can't see the shafts. They were used only when you wanted to have some pattern, yes. But it was something that looked similar to this heddle rod. The shafts, iron-bound axes, and arrows are the shuttles. Shuttle is what was in the end of this vest, yes, and was thrown from left to right and the right to left to fill the vest in the warp. And the sword, which is mentioned in the last line, which beat this web of victory, is this weaving sword that you can see in the image, yes, which was used to somehow to fix better the woven fabric. And there is an interesting thing. I told you that what was typical for Old Norse poetry was a kind of irregularity of the rhythm. Yes, there was rhythm, but it was typically irregular. And it's interesting that in Stefjubalkr, the central part of the poem, there is a refrain in this poem. And this refrain, you can see marked red. It says in Old Norse, vindum, vindum, vev daradar, and it's repeated again and again. And under, in English, we weave the web of war, which the young king once have waged. Let us advance and wade through the ranks where friends of ours are exchanging blows. Yes, and then it is repeated again and again. We weave the web of war. And if you look at the structure, it is not completely trochaic, but it starts to be a bit trochaic. And this is interesting point since we find something similar in other Old Norse poems that have something to do with work. Yes, I mean like physical work. There is an Old Norse poem, a mystical poem in this case, which is called Grotto, and it's about two divine beings who are milling or grinding with such a big mill stone. And you see the similar features again, yes? First, this iteration of words and phrases that is used when creating the lines, yes? If I start with Old Norse, out malum froda, malum alselan, malum fieldfjar. In English, let us grind riches for Frodi, let us grind him all fortunate, let us grind messy wealth, and so on, yes? In the next half stanza, Sitihan a Audi, Sofihan a Duni, Vakihan Advilia, Sa Ervel Mali. In English, may he sit on riches, may he sleep on down, may he wake to joy, then is milling well done. Yes, and what you can see here again is the rise of trochaic structure. Yes, you see again, it's not perfect, but there is a lot of trochee in it. And I would like to mention the last parallel, which is from Sturlunga saga, the saga of Sturlung, and it's described again a kind of vision, in this case dream vision, which is connected to a battle that took place in Vidines in Iceland in the year 1208. And it says that many dreams were dreamt, and that some man in Skagafjörður had a dream in which he seemed to enter a large house. Inside, it said, two women who were covered with blood and were rocking back and forth. It seemed to him to be raining blood through the louvers in the roof, and one of the women said, Viro and Viro, Gunnar og Gendul, these are names of Valkyries. The raining blood portends the fall of man. Let us betake us to Raptahlid, this locality. There we receive sacrifice and cures. And in Westfjords, a man dreamed that he entered a little room, and two black-clad men were sitting there with grey coals on their heads. They clasped each other's hands, and each sat on his own bench and wrote. They struck against the wall so forcefully with their shoulders that they threatened to fall over. Presently, they recited the stanza, and each spoke a verse in turn. The walls are tilting, the men smite each other. They won't be settled when the heads, that means the cowled men, come in. Deeds will be done as never before. They bring no honor at day of judgment. So it's again a kind of prophecy which is seen in this dream vision. Yes. And now, what's interesting on this case? There is again the same structure. Yes, there is this viro and viro, Rome with chrome with in Old Norse, and there is this movement. Yes, there is this movement. These two women, these two men are not only speaking about rowing. Yes, they are making the movement. Yes, actually the Old Norse verb roa can mean both rowing and performing a movement similar to one that is done when rowing, like to move the upper half of the body back and forth.
We
Yes,
have
and
a couple of more minutes if we will not have discussion. So
yes. I'm going to finish just now. The question is why? Yes, because probably in these examples I spoke about before, it's the same. It's not explicitly stated in the poems that the women, these weaving women and grinding women, are making the bodily moves. But probably we must think about like this, that they are doing, and why do they do it? Yes, there are generally two ideas: that it's to intensify a ghostly atmosphere of the scenes, and the other that is to present the divine powers as working. And I think that basically both these ideas are right. Yes, these are divine figures, divine powers. And this is why they are doing so strange moves. But at the same time, they are showing as performing some work or performing some movements that resemble the work. And that goes together with the trochaic structure, which is quite typical for Old Norse rhymes that were really connected to physical work. And that's what I wanted to say, yes, that this pieces of work rhythm used in poetry try to evoke in us the expectation or the feeling of doing some work. And that's exactly what their authors intended, to show us these divine powers as working, moving in all senses of the word, and acting. And that's everything I wanted to say, and I thank you for attention.
thank you. Maybe you can start. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. This is really view to something somewhere totally else, and we have really a little bit time for the short discussion. And Sarah just asked a question that I also wanted to pose. So Sarah, would you like? Or you can read it in the chat, but or Sarah, you can repeat it as well.
If you wish, but I see the question actually. If these
Yeah.
poems have been sung, actually that's something we don't know about. Earlier, it was generally thought that the poems were sung. Today, the scholars are much more skeptical, but you can, of course, still find it in translations. But today, it's rather thought that they were like dramatically performed, but not sung with melodies.
So what does, I mean, I'm not familiar with what Old Norse sounds like. I have a friend from Iceland who says that he can read Old Norse easily because it's close to Icelandic. But when you're talking about the rhythm and things like that, and you gave great translations, I appreciated that. But I was wondering, could you recite some of this stuff in Old Norse and let us know what it sounds like?
Yes, that's no problem. I just have to start it again, because
yeah, just to get to your slides. Yeah.
In contrast to this man seeing these women, I don't know them by heart. So if you look here, what you see up there, it's a kind of real work rhyme. Yes, it was really found on a whetstone, quite old, from 600, written in runes. And it's not Old Norse, it's protomars, but it's just a little bit older. And it says really, Vate, Hali, Hinu, Horna, Haha, Skadi, Hadu, Ligi. Yes. So you see, it was obviously, or I think obviously, used when wetting something sword or probably sky, and you see that their trochee is perfect. Yes. If you go to these literary examples, like the the first poem I spoke about. So I can start with the first stanza, yes, saying Vindum, Vindum, Vevdaradar, Sans und Skong, Ati, Firi, Framsklung, Ganga, och I folk vada, dar vinner orer vapnum skipta. Yes, you see that it is kind of a bit regular, more regular than usual Old Norse poems, but not so much, yeah, as for example this real work song.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is really great. I think if somebody has a really short question, we can have one more question before we take a break, but a really short one. David Merlin has a question.
Yes,
Oh,
there
hi.
are.
Good afternoon. I wanted to ask you, you showed at the beginning of your presentation there was an image with text and musical notation, which was
Yes.
more or less score notation. I'd like to ask you if there is only this kind of notation or also other kinds, yeah, for example, the Bohemic notation or the German notation or rhythmic notation.
I am sorry, I must say I don't know this. Yes, I don't know this. Probably you find some other kinds of music notations, but later. Later again, this is what I show. It's told by, as I know, everybody to be the oldest piece of musical notation in Scandinavia, and it's actually quite short. It's not a part of some bigger piece. What you have seen is the whole. It's just beginning of the song, which was like typical in Old Norse when for example, writing down stanzas, yes, that you mark just the beginning of the stanza, and it was understood that the people know the rest, and when they know the beginning, they will continue. And that was probably the case with this piece. Definitely was the case with the piece as well, because it must have been longer. Yes? 2 verses, that gives no sense.
And now I must very unpopularly interrupt this discussion to give everybody the opportunity to get coffee or tea or whatever. So thank you very much to both presentees. And we will make a short break. Let's start 20 past in 12 minutes, 20 past 4. We will have a section on medieval songs basically. And so enjoy. We will stay again around like yesterday. We stood around and grab a coffee if you want to just chat with your colleagues, with your friends. So you have the possibility. Otherwise, we will meet in 20 past 4 here.
Mm. So does it mean that I can answer the questions now that are in chat?
You can continue. The formal discussion is over, but you can still continue in informal way. I think that there are
yes,
questions. Okay.
Yes, about Beowulf, the poetry of Beowulf is somehow more regular than Old Norse one. Basically, they are related. Yes, this Fornirrislag I was showing the structure of is similar to the meter of Beowulf, but Beowulf is more regulated. And in the whole work, you see that it's a bigger work. Yeah, with it's quite long. Old Norse poems are usually short. They usually have up to 20, 30 stanzas. Yes, poems having, for example, 50 stanzas are already an exception. Yes, Beowulf doesn't have the stanzaic form, but it's much longer than any Old Norse poems. Much longer, like 10 times longer, or even more. Old Norse poem we have, and it's also more regular. That's the point. Then the next question, Bayan Haich, if these poems were spoken during actual work. So I think that the first one I have shown, this one with Valkyries and the slave girls and the mill, and the throwing Valkyries in a dream, I don't think they have been spoken by actual work. I think that was the case of, for example, this short stanza that we find on this whetstone. Yes. Or there are some, but these are not even stanzas. These are really like rhymes, short rhymes, that are evidence to serve as a kind of marching rhymes when the armies were marching into battle. Because these were obviously connected to body movements as well, yes, to this marching. And it's interesting to observe that these usually are either very close to trochaic form, or they have like purely trochaic form, that they are like trochee. Yes. So if there are some more questions, I am glad to answer them.
Well, if I may,
Yes.
the last thing, do you think that body movement, as you had this example of these two women which were somehow moving like that, what I imagined with blood everywhere.
Yes.
Would you say that the trochaic rhythm is more apt to such sort of body movement or marching than, say, iambic, or is that because that's just the opposite thing? Or would you say that there are, especially in those poems where you find this trochaic form very much obvious, very obvious, that these are related to going somewhere? We march to fight these, or I don't know, something. They are in moving of their body, or is it not as much matching?
Yes. I hope I understand the question, and it would be actually quite interesting to try. Yes, because I think that there is really no other way how to find it. Simply to try. And I was thinking, as far as I know, no one has ever tried. In case of marching, I think that trochee is really a natural. Yes, when I was trying, you always have a stress on the. Yes, what we do with the right leg, yes, there we give the stress, and the right foot is left foot is a kind of lighter. I don't know about rowing, because when I was trying on the sofa at home, I found actually that the stress is probably on the second move. Yes, that first you bow forward, and there you don't need any strength, and then when moving backward, there is like naturally stress. But of course, we don't know at which moment they started the recitation. Yes, maybe they were starting on this back movement. I think it would be really a great idea to try it once. Yeah.
And may I ask something else, because that's a little a small hobby of mine. This old English and Old Norse and Beowulf and all that. It's many years ago. I was much more into it. I'm a bit out now. But you said that the Beowulf is much more regular. Is it? What I remember, it mostly has two stresses on each side of the line. They are in these two halves, so one has two and one has two, not at the same places. So in each line it's different where they are, but they have two stresses, and they're also, and the next line 2 and 2. Is that maybe something which is much more regular in Beowulf than in the Old Norse poetry you described, or are these other parameters?
No. That's the same actually as the Old Norse meter, which is called Fornirdislag. The number of stressed syllables is completely same as in Beowulf. So in each short line, you have two stresses. And in long line you have 4 stresses. Yes, but what I meant with this more regular is that the variation of the number of unstressed syllables is much bigger in Old Norse than in Beowulf, because in Old Norse, because there is the same rule as in Beowulf, that in each short line you must have two stressed syllables. But in Old Norse, actually, you find the lines where there are only these two stressed syllables and nothing more. There is, for example, quite famous line saying "Deir fair." Yes, so it's according to the same rule. There must be two stressed syllables, but there is actually nothing more. But then you find the short line where there are like 10 unstressed syllables. Yeah, so actually quite long ones. Yes, and this variation it's different in different poems and different meters. But in this sense, I think that the variation in Old Norse it's bigger than in Beowulf. Yes, where of course. There is some variation, but not so big one as in Old Norse.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry,
write
but
your email so we can maybe
Yeah.
sometimes continue.
I apologize, but
Yes,
I need to.
Gladly.
We need to perform a short audio test with one of the speakers for the next session. So I'm sorry, but I have to.
Yes, I
keep the
stop.
discussion short. Lenko?
Ano, jo, já jsem se dopracovala k tomu odkazu, ale to nemůžu.
Zkus sdílet obrazovku.
Ano, tam sdílet obrazovku.
A dole by mělo jít zaškrtnout sdílet audio.
A už to vidím, share computer sound, dobře.
Tak, a zkus, jestli to půjde.
Ano, tak já si tam dám rovnou prezentaci, jo.